Dr. Brian Monk, and everyone else at the UPHE. You crossed a line you can't uncross. You wrongfully stole my freedom and tarnished my good name. And now, I will pursue accountability in every forum until this can never happen to anyone else.
Thousands of people think something terrible happened to Diesel Dave. Search his name online and you'll find tribute videos, sad edits, and rumors that refuse to die.
4-year lawsuit has ended. The Diesel brothers are sharing their side of the story. A federal judge ordered the custom truck makers to pay more than $800,000 to the U.S. government as well as Davis County for polluting Utah's air.
The problem is that none of it is true. Diesel Dave is very much alive. But the real story of what happened after Diesel Brothers ended is far more surprising than most fans realize. So, where is Diesel Dave today? What became of the business that made him famous? And what happened to the other Diesel Brothers fans who watched alongside him for years? Join us as we uncover the truth about what happened to Diesel Dave after Diesel Brothers.
They treat everybody like they're Mormon, and it's nothing crazy. So whether you're Mormon or not, do you want to kill somebody? No. Are you going to lie, cheat, steal, rob? The alcohol thing is a big one. It destroys people. It's really hard for a lot of people to drink responsibly.
Bros at first sight. Dave Kiley met Dave Sparks at one of those young single adult church events. And by his own account, it was bros at first sight. Heavy D had invited him out to the lake with a group of friends in his pickup truck not long after. A casual hangout that neither of them treated as the start of anything in particular at the time. According to one widely repeated account of how the friendship actually solidified, Sparks had been trying to impress a girl and accidentally put regular gasoline into his diesel truck. Kiley helped him drain the tank before the mistake could ruin the engine, and the friendship took off from there. Neither of them had any idea that a ruined gasoline tank was about to become the opening scene of a partnership that would eventually culminate in national television, a book deal, and a Discovery Channel show watched by millions. What came next, though, was years away from any of that. A long stretch of false starts that had nothing to do with diesel trucks at all. Long before Diesel Brothers existed, Kiley and Sparks cycled through a string of business ventures together that had nothing to do with trucks at all. Kiley has described the progression himself. Landscaping brothers, bunker selling brothers, used car salesman brothers, and at one stretch, simply hiatus brothers, a period where the partnership paused entirely while both men went their separate ways for a while. During one of those gaps, Kiley flew down to Brazil with two friends, Brian Alfin and Jim Anderson, simply because all three of them spoke Portuguese and wanted to have fun. It's a small detail that says a lot about who Kiley actually was in his 20s. A guy with a useful, slightly unusual skill from 2 years overseas, using it to chase a good time with friends rather than to build any kind of career plan. He was just a guy in his 20s stitching together income wherever it showed up, with no particular plan for any of it to lead somewhere bigger. That aimlessness ended the day Sparks called him up and asked him to come work together again. Sparks and Kiley started marketing one of their first websites, dieselsellers.com, and came up with the idea of giving away a truck to drive traffic to the site. They built that first giveaway truck themselves, fabricating it in a small shop using welding skills they'd picked up in high school without all the proper equipment, and, by Kiley's own admission, getting it wrong more than once along the way. There was no investor backing or sponsorship deal waiting in the wings for that first build. It was just two guys who'd cycled through landscaping, bunkers, and used cars, betting that a homemade truck and a wristband raffle might finally be the idea that stuck. To fund the giveaway, they sold rubber wristbands for entries, while posting videos on Facebook and YouTube of the pranks and chaos that came with two friends learning to fabricate trucks on the fly. One of those videos eventually caught the attention of Jay Leno, a known car enthusiast who brought the pair onto The Tonight Show. Discovery Channel came calling shortly after, and Diesel Brothers premiered on January 4th, 2016. Getting discovered by Jay Leno carries its own kind of validation in the car world. Few public figures have spent more of their careers championing amateur builders and backyard mechanics than Leno himself, and his attention tends to serve as an informal stamp of approval that opens doors a YouTube view count alone never could. A wristband giveaway built around amateur welding had somehow turned into a national television deal. The show went on to run 6 full seasons and more than 49 episodes, following the pair and their small crew of shop helpers as they hunted down wrecked diesel trucks, rebuilt them into outsized custom machines, and gave several away to fans along the way. 2 other men joined the original pair as shop helpers early on, rounding out the small crew that the cameras eventually followed as a unit, though it was always Sparks and Kylie carrying the show's actual title. Their success eventually extended into print as well, with the 2 Daves co-authoring The Diesel Brothers, A Truckin' Awesome Guide to Trucks, and Life Through Simon & Schuster, turning the on-screen partnership into a print product for fans who wanted more between seasons. What came with all that visibility, though, wasn't just fame. It was a federal lawsuit that would eventually swallow years of both men's lives, though not in the way most headlines about the show would later suggest. Diesel Brothers goes to court. In 2016, a Utah advocacy group called Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment filed a civil lawsuit alleging the Diesel Brothers had engaged in significant, repeated, and ongoing violations of federal law, accusing them of modifying vehicles to remove emissions equipment and produce illegal black smoke, a practice commonly known as rolling coal. The irony was hard to miss. The same diesel smoke stunts that had helped build the brand's entertainment value, trucks roaring past the camera in a cloud of black exhaust, became the centerpiece of a federal environmental case against the people who'd filmed them. In June 2018, after hearing testimony from a Utah-based emissions inspector based in Davis County, a judge issued an injunction barring any further modifications of that kind. The injunction itself was meant to be a clean stopping point, a line drawn in the sand that, if respected, would have ended the legal fight right there. It didn't work out that way. Sparks maintained the narrative that the trucks were modified strictly for off-road use and that he believed he was operating within the law, working with the EPA to stay compliant. The advocacy group pursuing the case had gone so far as to purchase one of the company's trucks directly and send it to a lab in Denver, Colorado, for emissions testing, building part of its case on those independent results, rather than relying on footage alone. The rolling coal clips that had helped make the show entertaining, trucks blasting thick black exhaust on command, became the exact evidence used against the business in court. In March 2020, U.S. District Court Judge Robert J. Shelby fined Sparks, along with Keaton Hoskins and Joshua Stewart, and their associated companies, a combined $850,000 for hundreds of Clean Air Act violations and for breaching the earlier injunction. Judge Shelby noted that the figure fell below the maximum penalty available under the law, citing several mitigating factors he considered before settling on the final amount. The following year, Sparks and Stewart were separately ordered to pay an additional $928,602 in legal fees on top of the original penalty, a number that, combined with the original fine, pushed the total financial exposure for those 2 men alone well past $1.7 million before any appeal had even been decided. Here's the detail that gets lost in nearly every "What Happened to Diesel Dave" news circulating online. Kylie's name doesn't appear in those rulings. The defendants named across the fines, the injunction, and the years of follow-up litigation are Sparks, Hoskins, and Stewart, not Kiley. Whatever legal storm was building around the Diesel brothers' name, it was landing on his business partner, not on him. That distinction would have been easy to miss at the time, since the show itself never separated the two men's public identities. Every episode, every interview, every magazine feature treated Heavy D and Diesel Dave as a single inseparable unit, the same brand wearing two faces. The federal court system, it turned out, drew a much sharper line than the television show ever did. In December 2021, an appeals court upheld the previous rulings against Sparks and his co-defendants, with the panel specifically noting what it called flagrant misconduct on the Diesel brothers' part, though it also ordered the original judge to recalculate the fine to remove penalties tied to trucks or parts that had been sold outside Utah. An appellate panel taking the time to single out a defendant's conduct as flagrant, rather than simply upholding a fine on technical grounds, is a notably harsh characterization for any business owner to have permanently attached to a published court ruling. Even that recalculation, a legal lifeline that could have meaningfully reduced what was owed, still ran through Sparks's name specifically, not Kiley's. That distinction would end up mattering enormously just a few years later, once the lawsuit's consequences finally caught up with one half of the pair and not the other. The final race. Diesel brothers ran for 7 seasons before wrapping in 2020, capped by a 3-hour special titled Diesel Brothers: Monster Jam Breaking World Records, which aired on August 8, 2020. That special doubled as the final public appearance for both of their signature monster trucks, the Bro Camino and Bro Dozer, which faced off in an exhibition drag race built specifically for the broadcast. The Bro Camino itself had debuted that same year, 2020, with Kiley behind the wheel alongside fellow driver Cam McQueen and Heavy D rotating through Bro Dozer, the kind of multi-truck, multi-driver lineup that defined the brand's monster truck era before the pandemic cut the touring season short. The show's ending didn't mean Dave actually stopped building or driving trucks. It just meant the cameras that had followed them for 6 years finally stopped rolling weekly. Both men had already built a second identity inside the monster truck world, specifically racing custom builds on the Monster Jam circuit, alongside the kind of veteran competitors who'd been doing it for decades before either Dave or I ever picked up a welding torch. Sparks had spent 2018 through 2020 as the primary driver of Bro Dozer on the Stadium Championship Series, even winning both freestyle competitions at an Anaheim event in 2019 before the pandemic cut the 2020 tour short. Kiley's own monster truck career ran on a slightly different track, built around the Bro Camino and a rotation of other custom builds rather than a single signature truck. Kiley kept competing in monster trucks well past the show's end. In 2021, he drove a truck called Rockwell RED and drove it again in 2022 at an event in Pleasant Grove, Utah. He and Sparks then announced they were taking a break from monster trucks altogether, only to make a surprise return at a Salt Lake City event in 2024. Even a self-declared retirement from a sport this physical apparently wasn't permanent for either man. Both of them pulled back in by an event in their own backyard. That same year, both men served as professional judges at the Monster Jam World Finals 23, sitting alongside veteran judges Tom Meents, Bernard Light, and Rosalie Raymer. Going from competitor to judge is its own kind of milestone in motorsports. The moment a sport's established names start treating you as someone whose opinion on other people's driving actually carries weight, rather than just another driver chasing a podium finish. In 2025, Kiley returned again as a guest judge at the World Finals in Salt Lake City. Hosting the World Finals in their own home state put both Daves in front of a hometown crowd that had watched their entire rise, from a homemade truck giveaway to to a national TV deal to a recurring spot judging one of the sport's biggest annual events. That September, both Diesel brothers appeared together on Fox News Live to discuss a custom truck giveaway and the broader state of the trucking industry, the same kind of media appearance that had defined their public partnership for nearly a decade. They talked about trucking policy, the giveaway they were running, and the kind of blue-collar branding that had built their entire business on a national cable news segment. Just 1 month before everything for Sparks, personally, was about to fall apart. From the outside, nothing about Kiley's post-show career looked like a man in crisis. He kept showing up to the same kind of events, judging the same competitions, and doing the same media rounds he'd been doing since Jay Leno first put him on television. His business partner's year, on the other hand, was about to look completely different, while his business partner was getting arrested. On October 7, 2025, federal marshals arrested Sparks on multiple contempt charges stemming from his failure to pay $843,602.23 owed to Utah physicians for a healthy environment and booked him into the Salt Lake County Jail. He addressed the arrest directly in an Instagram video shortly after, saying he'd just gotten out of jail and wanted to set the record straight, explaining he'd been arrested as he was preparing to board a jet to speak at an event on behalf of the state of Utah. That same month, the Utah advocacy group that had sued the Diesel brothers nearly a decade earlier reported fleeing threats in the aftermath of Sparks's arrest becoming public. A lawsuit filed back in 2016 over rolling coal and tampered emission systems had, nearly a decade later, escalated into something serious enough that the very people who'd brought the original case felt unsafe in their own community over it. Separately, the Federal Aviation Administration opened an investigation into the legality of flights Sparks had made in a Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter he personally owned, a detail that surfaced after a journalist who'd been a passenger on one of those flights 2 years earlier started asking questions about who actually owned and operated it. That journalist had been invited out to a desert off-road event sponsored by Polaris 2 years earlier, where the helicopter ride had simply been treated as one more fun perk of the trip. Nobody at the event would say who owned or operated the aircraft. It took 2 years and an unrelated arrest that made national headlines before the connection to Sparks resurfaced, and the FAA started asking the same question. Owning a military-grade Black Hawk helicopter outright is its own unusual flex for a YouTuber turned reality star, the kind of purchase that says more about Sparks's overall lifestyle and spending than any single line item in the federal court filings ever could. 5 months after the arrest, in March 2026, Sparks's wife Ashley filed for divorce in Utah, ending a marriage that began in August 2010. No reason for the split was listed in the filing. The federal judgment against Sparks, now exceeding $851,000, automatically attaches as a lien against his property under federal law, complicating the divorce considerably beyond a typical asset split. A Utah court eventually had to untangle whether that federal debt counts as Sparks's individual business liability or whether marital assets were commingled with the business that generated it in the first place. The kind of legal question that can drag a divorce out for months or years longer than either spouse originally expected. Federal judgments of this size don't simply disappear once a marriage ends either. They follow whichever spouse the court assigns them to for as long as the debt remains unpaid, regardless of what else gets divided in the settlement. None of that storm, the arrest, the FAA investigation, the divorce, or the federal lien has Kiley's name attached to it anywhere in the public record. So while Sparks was fighting for his freedom, Kiley was simply living his life the best way he could. Married on the 4th of July. Away from all the business and legal drama entirely, Kylie married Susan Kelly, a realtor and Arbonne consultant, on July 4, 2016, the same year Diesel Brothers premiered on national television. The two had reportedly known each other since their younger days before eventually settling down together, getting married on what Kylie has called the most American day of the year, a detail that fits the blue-collar, flag and flannel brand identity he and Sparks had already started building around themselves on camera. The couple has 3 children, a daughter, Sailor Faye, born January 12, 2017, a second daughter, born September 9, 2018, and a son, Jackson Kylie, born in February 2023. 3 kids were born across 6 years, right in the middle of the show's biggest run, and the lawsuit's slowest, most uncertain stretch, while the cameras outside the house were busy documenting truck builds rather than anything happening at home. Kylie's estimated net worth sits around $2 million, built from his stake in Diesel Sellers, the SparksMotorsOfficial.com, apparel and parts business, and the custom truck builds the partnership has continued to produce since the TV show ended. It's a comfortable figure built the slow way, through more than a decade of fabrication work, apparel sales, and truck giveaways, rather than through any single windfall, and notably untouched by the federal penalties that have spent years working their way through his business partner's finances instead. Together, the two Daves still run SparksMotorsOfficial.com, an online store built around apparel celebrating patriotism and blue-collar culture, sitting alongside the custom diesel trucks and parts business that started the entire saga. It's a quieter, steadier version of the business than the one that once needed a wristband giveaway just to drive traffic to a website. Years of national television exposure had already done that work permanently. Did you actually believe something tragic happened to Diesel Dave before reading this? And would he ever be free from the challenges that he is currently facing? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.